In our headlines on this Tuesday, December 9th, here in South Korea. Speaking at a cabinet meeting earlier today, President Lee Jae-myung acknowledges the emergence of K-food as a significant export engine for South Korea and pledges to nurture it as a strategic industry. And today, the National Assembly marks the last day of this year's regular parliamentary session amid the presence of pending bills of much contention between rival lawmakers. Meanwhile, over in the US, President Donald Trump endorses the export of NVIDIA's advanced H200 computer chips to, quote, approved customers in China. The ancient words of wisdom claim the best way to a person's heart is through their stomach. Well, President Lee Jae-myung appears to agree and has pledged to further promote K-food as an important export engine. Our top office correspondent Yoon Jung-min reports.
Nurturing K-food as a strategic export industry. That was a key message from President Lee Jae-myung during a weekly cabinet meeting that mainly focused on discussing measures to promote exports of K-food.
올해 들어서 지난달까지 K-푸드 수출의 규모가 역대 최고 실적을 경신했다고 합니다. 입맛을 사로잡는 것은 마음을 사로잡는 것이다.
He added that interest in K-food originates from the popularity of K-culture, and it contributes to an increase in exports, stressing the importance of promoting Korea on a global scale.
관계부처는 해외 마케팅, 물류 지원, 관광 연계 상품 개발, 지식재산권 보호 강화 같은 종합 지원 방안을 마련하면 좋겠습니다.
A special planning bureau dedicated to K-food exports will soon be launched. Other than diversifying export markets and items, an idea has been floated regarding creating a school to nurture chefs to meet the growing demand.
We suggest creating a famous Korean food school, tentatively called Sura School.
President Lee instructed his officials to review establishing specialized schools for K-food cooking classes. Other discussions included exporting surplus rice, as Lee said rice prices in Japan have tripled.
우리나라는 쌀 남아서 맨날 시끄럽죠. 일본도 계약제비 수출하면 어때요?
Also on the table for Tuesday were methods to improve voting rights for overseas Koreans, such as expanding polling stations and introducing mail-in or electronic voting, as the president instructed his officials to make sure no one feels left alone. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
Today, that is Tuesday, December 9th, marks the last day of the National Assembly's regular session, and rival lawmakers have yet to find common ground on key issues of interest. I have our political correspondent An Sung-jin standing by with the latest. Sung-jin, welcome. So what have you been observing?
Right, Sunny. So today marks the last day of the regular session at the National Assembly, and a plenary session is underway at the moment. The plenary session was supposed to start at 2 p.m., but the two main parties failed to reach an agreement on the agenda. So the leaders of the ruling and main opposition parties, as well as the National Assembly Speaker Won-sik, agreed to postpone the session to 4 p.m. Have a listen to what the two leaders had to say.
We postponed the plenary session to allow both parties to gather consensus through their respective caucus meetings and to engage in further deliberation.
We pushed the plenary session back to 4 p.m. to allow more discussion. We will bring more updates.
Right then, Sung-jin, what are the major bills on the table today?
Right, so some of the expected contentious bills were those related to the judicial reform, including the establishment of a special court division for insurrection cases and the bill to revise the National Assembly Act, which tightens the conditions for launching a filibuster, both of which will not be introduced today. Instead, the Democratic Party announced that it will be prioritizing non-contentious bills, opting for a slower pace. On the agenda are more than 70 livelihood and non-contentious bills, including the Special Act on Strengthening and Supporting Competitiveness in the Semiconductor Industry, which saw a bipartisan agreement at the Trade and SMEs Committee. The People Power Party remains unwilling to yield. Earlier, the party has made it clear that as long as the DP pushes forward with contentious legislation, it will launch a filibuster against any bill brought to the floor, including non-contentious ones. and it followed through with that threat, launching a filibuster this afternoon. The plenary session will automatically adjourn at midnight as the session ends, and the bills will be put to vote at the first plenary session of the December extraordinary session, so we will have to keep an eye on how it ends today. That's all I have for now, but I will be back with the updated outcome in our later newscast.
All right, Sung-jin, thank you for now, and do keep us posted. Moving forward then, e-commerce giant Coupang is looking to face a class action lawsuit in the U.S. as well as a South Korean law firm's U.S. branch plans to pursue litigation amid the massive leak of customer data from the online retail platform. Our Kim Do-yeon has the latest.
A South Korean law firm has officially announced plans to file a class action lawsuit against retail giant Coupang in a U.S. federal court after the company suffered a data breach that affected millions of customers. Daeryun, along with its U.S. branch SJKP, held a press conference in New York City on Monday local time, confirming they are recruiting plaintiffs to seek punitive damages. The firm said it has already secured over 200 plaintiffs and intends to pursue simultaneous litigation in both South Korea and the United States. Representatives also noted that some clients are demanding criminal charges in addition to civil compensation, adding that they aim to secure approximately 1,000 plaintiffs before formally submitting the complaint to the New York federal court. This legal action follows Coupang's announcement late last month that personal information of nearly 33.7 million user accounts, including names, emails, phone users, and addresses, had been compromised. The lawsuit targets Coupang Incorporated, the U.S.-listed parent company that owns 100% of the South Korean operation. The decision to litigate in the U.S. is driven by two primary factors. First, U.S. courts are more active in recognizing liability links between parent companies and subsidiaries compared to South Korea. There are also allegations that Coupang may have failed to comply with U.S. regulations requiring listed companies to disclose material cybersecurity incidents within 4 business days. Under the U.S. discovery process, courts can also compel the submission of relevant data regardless of where the servers are located. Second is the scope of punitive damages. The U.S. legal system allows for significantly higher financial penalties for data privacy violations, as seen in Facebook's $5 billion fine and Equifax's $700 million settlement. With the minimum requirement for a class action suit already met, the legal team plans to file the complaint immediately upon expanding its plaintiff list. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
U.S. President Donald Trump has endorsed the export of NVIDIA's advanced H200 computer chips to China in a significant shift in policy. Our Park Chun-han explains.
In a move that weighs the balance between U.S. economic interests and national security, U.S. President Donald Trump conditionally approved on Monday local time NVIDIA's export of its H200 artificial intelligence chips to China. The H200 semiconductor is NVIDIA's second-best AI chip behind its current Blackwell series. President Trump, through his social media channel Truth Social, said the U.S. government will allow NVIDIA to ship its H200 chips to approved customers in China, a proposal to which President Xi Jinping has responded positively. In return for the approval, the U.S. government will collect a 25% fee on those sales. Trump said the fees will be used to support American jobs, strengthen U.S. manufacturing, and benefit American taxpayers. He added that NVIDIA's current Blackwell chips and next-generation Rubin series are not part of the export approval. And the same framework will also apply to U.S. chip makers such as AMD and Intel. When the news broke that the U.S. Commerce Department was set to approve the China sales, NVIDIA's stock rose about 2% in after-hours trading on expectations that the company could see increased revenue. In a statement responding to Trump's announcement, NVIDIA's spokesman said on Monday, "We applaud President Trump's decision to allow America's chip industry to compete to support high-paying jobs and manufacturing in America." Back in August, U.S. chip giants NVIDIA and AMD agreed to pay 15% of their revenue from certain less advanced chips exported to China to the U.S. government. However, that deal stalled after the Chinese government effectively banned the use of the chips over security concerns. Park Jun-han, Arirang News.
Back on the local front, findings for 2024 show roughly 4 out of every 10 households are made up of solo dwellers here in South Korea. Our Jin has details.
Government data based on an annual survey released on Tuesday showed that in 2024, there were 8.05 million single-person households in South Korea. People living by themselves made up around 36% of all households, making them the largest household category. Statistics Korea defines single-person households as one person who lives alone, earns their own income, cooks for themselves, and sleeps alone, a complete independent unit. Almost 20% of these single-person households were aged 70 or older, while 17.8% were aged 29 and under, making it the second consecutive year where the number of older single households exceeded the younger group. The increase in elderly single-person households has also led to increased demand for welfare services. With more than 60% of single-person households employed, the average annual income of people who live alone came to 34.23 million won. That's roughly $23,288. While this was a 6.2% jump from the previous year, it still stood at just 46.1% of the overall average income of all households. Single-person households have become the most common form of households in Korea recently, increasing in proportion by approximately 1 percentage point each year since it first exceeded 30% in 2019. Figures for 2024 showed an increase of 0.6% in the proportion of single-person households compared to the previous year, with the proportion of two-person households also rising by 0.2 percentage points. In contrast, the proportion of three-person and four or more person households decreased by 0.2 percentage points and 0.8 percentage points, respectively. By region, 42.7% of single-person households were concentrated in Seoul and Gyeonggi-do Province. A source from the Ministry of Data and Statistics said that single-person households continue to increase due to the population aging, the increase in unmarried people, as well as later marriages. The survey also showed that nearly half of all people living alone said they often or sometimes feel lonely. Yi Sun-sin, Arirang News.
South Korea says Russian and Chinese military aircraft entered its air defense identification zone earlier on this Tuesday morning. Now, Seoul's Joint Chiefs of Staff told members of the media here that 7 Russian and 2 Chinese military aircraft flew over the East Sea and southern waters. Now, in response, South Korea dispatched its Air Force fighter jets as part of tactical safety after detecting the Russian and Chinese aircraft in advance. Similar incidents have occurred in recent years amid growing joint air activity between Beijing and Moscow in Northeast Asia. North Korea's Kim Jong-un has extended his condolences to his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin amid the death of Russian ambassador Alexander Machegora to Pyongyang. According to the regime state media on this Tuesday, Kim called the Russian ambassador a close friend who had remained devoted to building ties between Pyongyang and Moscow since heading the Russian embassy from 2014. The North's Foreign Minister Choi Sun-yi also sent a similar message to her counterpart Sergei Lavrov. According to the Kremlin, the ambassador died this past Saturday at the age of 70. In neighboring Japan, authorities there withdrew their tsunami warnings earlier on this Tuesday morning after a powerful earthquake shook the country's northeastern region late Monday, hurting dozens of people and forcing thousands to evacuate. Our Pyongyang reports.
A magnitude 7.5 earthquake struck off the coast of Aomori Prefecture in northeastern Japan late on Monday night, shaking wide areas across the north of Honshu. It struck at around 11:15 p.m., and the epicenter was located at a depth of 54 kilometers. A strong magnitude 6.4 aftershock was recorded at 6:52 a.m. on Tuesday morning, followed by further aftershocks. Japanese officials now say the number of injured has risen to at least 30. One residential fire has been confirmed, and authorities warned the number of casualties and scale of damage may rise. Japan's Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi said the government is closely monitoring the situation and urged residents to take precautionary measures.
I immediately instructed that timely and accurate information regarding tsunamis and evacuation be provided to the public, that measures to prevent damage, such as evacuation of residents, be fully implemented, that the extent of damage be ascertained as swiftly as possible.
Takaichi also called on the public to protect their own lives first, urging residents to review evacuation routes, secure furniture, and remain prepared to flee immediately in the event of further shaking. Japanese authorities have also issued a rare advisory warning of possible large aftershocks in the Hokkaido-Sanriku offshore region, using an alert system introduced in 2022 for zones where major trench earthquakes are historically expected. Around 90,000 residents in Hokkaido, Aomori, and Iwate prefectures were ordered to evacuate overnight. Chief Cabinet Secretary Minoru Kihara said the government has activated a response office inside the Prime Minister's Crisis Management Center and convened an emergency team to support rescue and relief efforts. Several bullet train services along the northeastern coast have been suspended. Japanese authorities also informed the International Atomic Energy Agency that no abnormalities were detected at the disabled Fukushima nuclear facility. Pyongyang, Arirang News.
In other news now, director Park Chan-wook's No Other Choice is on the nomination list of the 2026 Golden Globe Awards for 3 potential titles. Now, they include Best Motion Picture in Musical or Comedy and Best Non-English Language Film. Also, lead actor Lee Byung-hun has been tapped for Best Male Performance in a Musical or Comedy Film. Meanwhile, Netflix's animated hit K-pop Demon Hunters has also earned 3 nominations. They are Best Animated Motion Picture, Best Cinematic and Box Office Achievement, and Best Original Song. The National Museum of Korea has on display an extensive exhibition about Admiral Yi Sun-sin, a military general renowned for his victories against the Japanese Navy during the Imjin War of the late 16th century. Our Cha Yun-kyung has a glimpse.
The Imjin Jangcho are the drafts of the Imjin War reports on the military situation during the Imjinweran, or the Japanese invasion of Korea in 1592, that were sent to the king. The drafts contain valuable information about the military strategies, situation, and even plans to secure supplies. Those who seek death shall live. Those who seek life shall die. My whitening hair troubles me only because my venerable mother still lives above. In the Nanjung-ilgi, we can find an ordinary man who yearns for his family while reflecting on his responsibility as a commander.
Today we walked all day beneath a rain of blossoms. The moonlight was picturesque, and the waves like silk. How a single human being, with such lyricism and tenderness in his heart, could still achieve 23 victories in 23 battles is beyond comprehension.
The ceremonial 2-meter-long sword embodies the resolute determination of Admiral Yi as a commander, while the delicate peach-shaped teacup touches upon the lyrical sensibility of the human side of Yi Sun-sin. In commemoration of the 80th anniversary of liberation, the National Museum of Korea has assembled an exhibition that presents not only the many facets of the hero who earned a string of victories, but also the vast records produced by later generations who honored him. And there are the heart-rending letters from citizens who emptied their piggy banks and saved even cigarette money upon hearing the news that Admiral Yi's tomb was to be put up for auction.
The story of an elementary school student of the time who wrote a letter to express their heartfelt devotion to Yi Sun-sin after reading a newspaper series about him is also striking.
The 80th anniversary of Liberation special exhibition, the Great Admiral Yi Sun-sin, is being held from November 28th until March 3rd next year at Special Exhibition Gallery 2 of the National Museum of Korea. Cha Yun-kyung, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you everything you need to know from around the globe. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky met with UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer French President Emmanuel Macron and German Chancellor Friedrich Merz in London on Monday to discuss a revised peace plan drafted by Ukrainian and U.S. officials last week. Zelensky said there was, quote, small progress made, but talks remain divided over territory in eastern Ukraine. He said Europe's counter-proposal will be ready on Tuesday, while the U.S. continues pushing Kiev to reach a settlement with Russia. At the same time, Russia said its forces have captured 2 villages in the east and south of Ukraine. In the U.S. on Monday, Paramount Skydance launched a direct $108.4 billion offer to buy Warner Bros. Discovery, aiming to surpass Netflix's separate plan to acquire the company's studio and streaming network. Paramount said its $30 per share proposal delivers more cash and a higher chance of regulatory approval. Warner Bros., which named Netflix the preferred bidder on Friday, said it will review Paramount's new offer and respond within 10 business days. At the same time, President Donald Trump said the Netflix-Warner deal, quote, could be a problem due to market share, but later said he needed to review the numbers. He also said he will be involved in the federal approval process. In the U.S. on Monday, Alina Habba resigned as New Jersey's acting top federal prosecutor 1 week after a U.S. appeals court ruled she had been unlawfully serving as U.S. attorney for the state. Attorney General Pam Bondi accepted the resignation and said the ruling made it impossible for Habba to continue in the role. The court found that Habba's appointment by U.S. President Donald Trump bypassed required Senate confirmation and likely affected multiple criminal cases in the state. Habba will remain at the Justice Department as a senior advisor and plans to seek further review of the decision. In the UK, Liverpool forward Mohamed Salah has accused the club of, quote, throwing him under the bus after being left out of the 3-3 Premier League draw at Leeds United, his 3rd straight match on the bench. Salah said he is being blamed for the team's drop in form this season. Manager Arne Slot said the decision was tactical and confirmed Salah has not traveled to Italy for Tuesday's Champions League match at Inter Milan. Salah leaves for the Africa Cup of Nations with Egypt on December the 15th. Chu Ji-hyun, Arirang News.
It was another freezing morning with temperatures plunging below zero across the country. In Seoul, the temperature dropped sharply to minus 2.4 degrees Celsius, a bit colder than yesterday. However, that cold air warmed up quickly with highs rising above the seasonal average. We're not expecting any strong cold spells for the time being. However, dry conditions are continuing for areas of the East Coast. Please stay alert as the dryness means there is a higher risk of wildfires. Seoul and Gwangju will start off at 1 degree on Wednesday, Daejeon and Gyeongju at minus 1 degree. Daily highs will rise to 10 degrees in Seoul, 13 degrees in Gwangju and Busan. Looking ahead on Thursday and Saturday, we have some rain and snow in the forecast nationwide. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. As always, thank you for watching.